The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NBA Big 3 in 30. The 3 biggest stories in the NBA from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NBA Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest stories in the NBA.
Luka Doncic is out at least 1 month. Luka Doncic, according to Shams Charania of ESPN, he's out at least a month. He's going to be reevaluated in a month. And on the show, I literally just finished. Like I said, everything still applies on that. But I went through possible timelines, and our friend of the pod, Jeff Stotts at In Street Clothes on Twitter, great follow. He said on there after the Luka injury on Christmas Day. He said, I'm just going to quote him on Twitter. He said, regarding Luka Doncic, there's a lot of variability in calf strains, as the calf is a muscle complex made up of multiple muscles. The pending MRI will help determine the muscle involved in severity. All signs point to this being a more moderate strain. Average time lost for a grade 2 strain is 15 games, roughly 34 days. Sounds a lot like what Jeff just said. As far as Jeff saying around a month, around 15 games. If you look from now and you look 4 weeks from today, which is Thursday, December 26th, we're right around midnight Central Time. 4 weeks from now, a month from now, is that's the 15th game against OKC. So that's when the plan is, I guess, to be reevaluated around then. And we'll see where he's at from there. If it is 4 weeks and he's back, probably not against that OKC game directly a month from now, then yeah, it probably was that grade 2 strain that Jeff is talking about. And it's 4 weeks. A month, it's tough, right? Especially in this NBA season and this the gauntlet in the Western Conference that it is. It's super tough to miss Luka for that long. And I talked about possible timelines on the bigger show. This is a quicker show, around 15 minutes probably today. But 4 weeks from now, a month from now, it's 15 games. If you look at 2 weeks after that, that's the NBA trade deadline. So 6 weeks until the trade deadline. And on the show, I actually predicted a little bit where I said I was the date I'm circling right now is that All-Star break, because All-Star break, he's probably but All-Star break is 8 weeks from now. That would be 26 games missed if he misses all the games up to All-Star break. So if you were in the camp as myself that was looking at that All-Star weekend and being like, man, is he going to miss the next 2 months? You're at least encouraged, right? That it's hey, he's going to be reevaluated in a month. Doesn't say he's going to be back in a month. Doesn't say that, hey, he's going to be reevaluated in 2 weeks with the goal of being back in a month. Wish it was that. Yes, I do. He's going to be reevaluated in a month. So that reevaluation could mean a lot of things, right? Hey, it needs more time. It could be, hey, he's going to start practicing in a month. It's I don't know what that whole thing looks like, but reevaluated in a month. What we do know from that report from Shams is he's not going to be playing basketball at least for a month. So what's the timeline after that? We can speculate all that we want, but we don't know. But we do know we're probably looking at least the next 15 games without Luka Doncic. And you say, Isaac, well, the Mavericks have done good without him before, right? Yes, if you want to stay positive with that and say, yes, the Mavericks went 6-2 without Luka. They have weathered the storm without him before. Yes, that is the positive side. I would just throw a little caution at it of saying, I think it's a little hard just to be like, hey, we went 6-2 without him. We're perfectly fine. He is the best player on the Dallas Mavericks. He is an MVP candidate. And anytime you lose that type of guy, holding the ship down is holding the fort down is really, really, really difficult to do. And you think about that last stretch of games for the Mavericks. You're looking at Najee Marshall, who stepped up and was averaging over 20 points a game. And it was some of the best offense that he's played in his career. Well, now he's been kind of in a funk. Like he missed all those games for the illness. Then he's been back and his minutes have been kind of weird. Is it conditioning? Is it just how the game flow has been playing out? I don't know what that is, but it's kind of hard to imagine just him like instantly snapping the fingers and averaging over 20 a game right now because of how everything's been for him over the past few weeks. So just to assume the Mavericks, hey, they went 6-2, they're gonna be perfectly fine. They're gonna go 13-2, or they're gonna go 10-5 over the next 15. That's a big assumption, but they have the roster and the personnel to do it. I think. Let's talk a little bit more about this Mavericks stuff. Once again, Shams saying that Luka's going to be reevaluated in a month, and where the Mavericks go from here. If you look at the Mavericks schedule right now, obviously the Suns are happening on Friday night, back to back, and then you're going to Portland on Saturday. Shout out to the Kings game on Monday. Kings, kind of weird vibes right now. But yeah, I mean, we could sit here and go through the whole schedule here over the next 4 weeks of those 15 games and be like, my favorite thing to do: win, loss, win, loss, win, loss. But they have some tough games in there. I mean, you're playing a really good Grizzlies team. You're playing a Cavs team that's one of the best teams in the league. Obviously, Phoenix just had a big Christmas Day win against Denver. Houston's, been doing great in the Western Conference this year. So it's going to be fascinating to see what happens with Dallas over the next 4 weeks. And I mentioned this on the podcast before this, the full episode one. Go listen to that. Please don't just like bury that one. Because there's a lot of stuff on there. I talked about the trade deadline approach from there, and just like if Dallas looks at this and they're saying, all right, we're confident in our defense moving forward over this next month, but offensively, they obviously need Kyrie Irving to be vintage Kyrie Irving. I talked a lot about PJ Washington's role, and I think that's the guy you're looking at over these next 4 weeks. But I want to expand on something just a little bit more. Do you look at the opportunity now and you look at the rest of the league and you're like, do I need any more offense via trade over the next month? Do they look at their supporting cast? Do they look at their team? And I'm not saying they should. I'm not saying that they will. But if Dallas went out and made a trade over the next week and they brought in a more offensive oriented guy, I could see the reasoning behind it some. If they're looking at it and saying, hey, Luka's out at least the next month, it could be longer. Maybe they're viewing that internally. Are we confident enough in the committee approach? Because this is how they're going to have to do it. We know all the stats this season as far as how many players in double figures, six players in this amount of games in a row. We've had 8 players in double figures. Like, they've had this committee approach to the offense. But if they're not committed to or confident in that, or if they're looking at it and saying, man, is Najee going to be able to do what he did before? Are we confident in Dinwiddie to put up those points? Or can we just go into any game and say, hey, we're confident that 2 of these guys alongside Kyrie can put up a decent amount of points in a game? If they're not as confident in that, is this where they look at the landscape and instead of looking at just a defensive minded wing, do they look at it and try to expand that a little bit more and be open a little bit more to maybe a wing that has a little bit more scoring to them? And I threw this out there in the last podcast, but if they're out there looking at the Dorian Finney-Smiths or the Larry Nances of the world, I think I want to say this. I think their focus would still be on those type of guys, especially for the price and the cost and all of that stuff. But would it shock you though if they shifted just a little bit and said, all right, maybe we need a little bit more of Cam Johnson scoring if Luka's going to be out 6 to 8 weeks instead of just the 4? Or I don't know. This is something I'm thinking about. Obviously the tweet just came out and I'm trying to process a little bit more right now of does Dallas shift a little bit into what they're looking for at the trade deadline? Not saying that they're going to go on, hey, we got to go get Cam Thomas now. I don't think that, but do they try to add a little bit more of a versatile player that gives a little bit more offense instead of just a 3-and-D defensive guy? I don't know. Probably not, but it's just something I'm thinking about and all of that. So there it is. Luka Doncic out at least a month. On the episode right before this, the longer episode, I talked about the history to his left leg and the calf strain and the left heel contusion. Talked about just really the things we do and don't know about this injury and situation, because I think a lot of people right now are trying to do well, I know the reason why Luka got hurt, and it's because he is this, 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 and this. And I'm like, oh God, here we go. So that's in the category of what we don't know, is how he exactly got the injury.
Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more near you. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
The Oklahoma City Thunder survive a scare from the Indiana Pacers.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The Thunder get a win over the Indiana Pacers, 120-114. It felt like the Thunder were going to drop this one. I mean, it was a really resilient effort from them tonight.
Yeah, the Thunder spotted the Pacers a 10-0 lead to begin, and it ended up being a 15-point lead at one point. And you just kind of had to wonder, like, they've won 8 straight. Like, everybody loses a game eventually, right? Well, the Pacers had won 5 straight. They'd come in hot. They'd beaten the Thunder 3 straight times. 8 out of the last 10 times the Pacers had beat the Thunder. So you just kind of wonder, no Caruso, maybe it's not the Thunder's night. But then Shai Gilgeous-Alexander happened.
He happened, and he had an MVP level game. Look, it's not all sunshine and rainbows after a win, even though it was a very fun win at the very end. But there were still some things the Thunder have to clean up, which we're going to get to. But in this game where you withstood 11 lead changes, 6 ties, and a 15-point Pacer lead, where the Pacers controlled the game for 2.5 quarters, 2 3/4 quarters, really, before the game started to go back and forth. And then the Pacers got a 2-possession lead in the middle of the fourth quarter that you thought maybe that would be enough, because Indiana kept retaliating. For every Thunder run, Indiana had an answer. And to their credit, they played the Thunder tough, created a clutch time situation, which has been so rare for the Thunder. But at the end of the day, SGA took over. And Brandon, I'm not sure how you could vote for anyone else to be MVP other than SGA.
Yeah, I tweeted after the game, SGA needs to move up the MVP ladder. And right now he's second. So if I'm saying he needs to move up, I think he needs to be first. The Thunder are number 1 in the West, the tougher conference, for the second straight season. They're number 1. They have a pretty big cushion right now. Denver is notoriously struggling right now this season. Obviously, Jokic is incredible, and he's putting up silly numbers, but they have been struggling. And SGA, many nights, have carried the Thunder to win like he did tonight. And he's still doing it with one of the youngest teams in basketball. And his numbers are silly also. Like, maybe he doesn't have the raw numbers that Jokic has, but when you look at the advanced numbers and when you look at like impact on winning and you look at the other side of the ball, defense, and what he's doing, then you look at nights like tonight where he ties his career high 45 points, but it's in one of the rare games this season where he was needed in clutch time. And what did he do? He responded in a big way. He took over. He hit a dagger 3. He iced the game with free throws. He was just incredible down the stretch. It was an MVP performance. And, you know, at some point you think that maybe voter fatigue, 3 out of the last 4 have gone to Jokic. Like, with Luka's unfortunate injury, he was considered, you know, a dark horse to get back into this race. It looks like right now it will be between Jokic, SGA, and Giannis. Well, Giannis, they don't have the record that the Thunder do. The Nuggets don't have the record that the Thunder do. And those guys have won MVPs. SGA's having yet another MVP season. I think it would be hard to deny SGA if the Thunder end up with the 1 seed in the West. And if the Nuggets aren't a top 3 seed in the West, I don't know how SGA doesn't win it if he keeps putting up those numbers, which I think we all expect he will.
And to that point, I mean, I think that something that people who maybe nationally aren't plugged into this team will look at is that the Thunder are the top seed in the West, which is as expected. So it's like, well, I mean, if you were supposed to be the number one overall seed and then you got there, what really have you accomplished in that sense? But it's not because of a lack of adversity. Like, this Thunder team is without its second or third, I would say second, some would say third best player on their roster, and won't have him for a large chunk of this regular season. And that really changes the scope and the lens of how we viewed this team as a runaway number one seed. And yet they're still running away with it right now, compared to last year where they were the one seed, yes, but it was due to a tiebreaker and a miracle in San Antonio. Like, they're not going to need a miracle if they keep playing like this. And if they keep playing like this, it'll be directly tied to SGA. So even with saying the Thunder the one seed again, it looks completely different this year. It's battling through injuries, and it's a growing cushion compared to a year ago where it was a three-way tie, and you really needed some outside factors that separated you from being the three seed, because we went into that final game going through all the scenarios of would you rather be the third seed, rather be the one seed, and they ended up getting the one seed due to tiebreaker. But SGA in this game, 45 points, 8 assists, 7 rebounds, 1 steal, 2 blocks, 11 for 11 at the free throw line. The free throw attempts did get inflated a bit because the Pacers had to foul a couple times late in this game to try to play and extend the game. But he did go 4 for 5 from 3 and shot 68% from the floor in 38 minutes. Brandon, I agree that SGA completely took this game over, took matters into his own hands to snatch a victory from the jaws of defeat. But it was not at the cost of playing team basketball and making the right decisions. Now, most of the right decisions come from SGA shooting the ball and driving the offense, but he still read the defense very well, made some high-level processing plays that helped the Thunder navigate clutch time, a very rare occurrence for them. I thought that he showed you why he's one of the best players in the world, and he showed you why he's capable of driving the bus for a championship-level team.
Yeah, he was just incredible tonight in all facets. Like you said, it wasn't like he was, selfish with the ball. He still had 8 assists, could have had some more. And he just continues to make the correct decision. Like his maturity and his basketball IQ have always been impressive. But when games get tough, we haven't seen it much this season. Like you said, a rare clutch game. Like, SGA has historically been really, really good in the clutch. And so tonight was like a nice reminder, like, hey, this guy can dominate in the clutch. And that's what he did. We just haven't seen it much this season. And, to your point, I think you can throw the preseason expectations out the window with Chet missing this many games, with Hartenstein missing the first part of the season, missing 20 games. Caruso has been out a lot. So, like, the offseason additions that boosted expectations for this Thunder team, I think they've missed a lot of games, Hartenstein and Caruso, and then obviously Chet being out so much. But the guy that's been there every night, averaging over 30 points a game, he's second in 30-point games this season, by the way, only one behind Giannis now. 18 or 19 straight games of 25-plus points per game, which is leading the NBA. He said last year, kind of famously, my whole life is consistent, but it's true. He is incredibly consistent. He is getting those 30-point games every single night, and he does it efficiently. He plays defense every night, and I think his consistency with injuries, guys in and out of the lineup, good shooting nights, bad shooting nights from other guys, you don't know quite what to expect, but every night you can expect SGA to score 30 efficiently and bring it on defense and make the right decisions with the ball, and that's what he does every night.
And that's why I think that wins have to matter in this conversation, is because you look at tonight, even when they got this win, he was the most valuable player by a wide margin. You take SGA off this team, whenever J-Dub can't score the ball, he goes for 36% from the floor on 22 shots. There's just no other scores on this team. It was all from SGA. No one else made double-digit shots. Jalen Williams had 8 out of 22 attempts that he made, and everyone else is most of 5 for Lou Dort, 4 for Kenrich and for AJ, and then 3 for Hartenstein. That's just the kind of game it was, where you needed everything from SGA. And at the end of the day, this looks like a game in which you went on the road, you took care of business, you covered the 5-point spread from our good friends over at FanDuel, but you still had to lean on SGA a ton. And that's impressive, because when you look at Giannis and Jokic, who aren't having the success record-wise that the Thunder are, what's it a result of? I mean, it's a result of their team, and this is a result of the Thunder have also had to battle team issues. They've had to battle having a roster that cannot consistently shoot. They've had to battle having a roster that is banged up. And Shai has not only navigated that to have individual success, but navigated that to have great team success. And so I think that the wins should matter in this particular race.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $500, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get 100 in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, do live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. And you can go ahead and take a look at the second round of the college football playoff. Despite having already beaten Ohio State, Oregon are 2.5-point underdogs against the Buckeyes in the Rose Bowl. Penn State heads into the Fiesta Bowl favored by 10.5 points over Heisman runner-up Ashton Jeanty and the Boise State Broncos. Both teams are a combined 10-0 in the Fiesta. Despite the larger line, this should be a good one. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast.
Pat Riley released a statement in response to the recent reporting around the Jimmy Butler situation. And he said, we usually don't comment on rumors, but all this speculation has become a distraction to the team and is not fair to the players and the coaches. Therefore, we will make it clear. We are not trading Jimmy Butler. Look, I do think that this Jimmy stuff has been obviously distracting. You read some of the quotes coming out of shoot around in Orlando, the players being asked about it. Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo, Eric Spoelstra was being asked about it. Spo basically said very little and kind of shut down that conversation with reporters. Tyler Hero said, look, we're just worried about what's on the floor and what we can control. Bam kind of saying the same thing. No real surprises there, but they did have to answer questions about this. And I think the distracting part of it was a factor at the early part of this Orlando Magic game. You know, they had 5 turnovers in the first 4 minutes. They were down 14-0. They didn't score their first field goal until the 7-minute mark of the first quarter, and they just did look a little out of sorts. So how much of that was, I don't know, post-Christmas blues or the Jimmy Butler distractions or just the fact that shot? I don't know, but I just know watching it, it did feel at least that it was a distraction. We're going to talk a lot more about the game and just sort of how it played out. But going back to the statement itself, this statement worries me as a Heat fan. If the front office really thinks that by simply releasing a statement is enough to end the speculation and this distraction, then it proves that this organization is as behind on the times as some fans have feared. Like, if you really think a press release is going to stop First Take from debating the best Jimmy Butler trade destinations, if you think that just releasing a statement in an email and in a tweet is going to stop fans from speculating, like, as long as this situation remains unresolved, meaning until we know where Jimmy Butler's next contract is coming from, people are going to speculate about this. And reporters are going to keep reporting about this because it is unresolved. It is not rumors. This is reporting. And Pat Riley uses that term rumors. And it's like, it's not a rumor that Jimmy Butler doesn't know where his next contract is. This does, and the reason why I would be worried and why I am worried is this does not come off the way that I think The Godfather thinks it comes off. This isn't dropping the rings on the table. David, to me, this is actually embarrassing. And it shows that this team just isn't with it in 2024. This front office is a little bit behind the times because this stuff does not work anymore. The toothpaste on this is out of the tube, and a press release, a tweet, that doesn't put it back in the tube. This is embarrassing.
That's a little strong. And I don't know that I necessarily agree with that necessarily as far as embarrassment is concerned. I could see Riley and the front office's perspective. One, they still think, maybe not that there's rumors about it, that there is certainly conversations being had and that Bernie is doing his job as Jimmy's agent to try and stir the pot as much as possible. That Shams Charania, as a reporter, is digging into this, getting probably information from Bernie Lee himself. And I think Riley was responding more than anything else because Spo was just like, oh, they kept asking me about it. And the players were talking about it and they were being asked about it. And look, as well they should. Like that, we weren't in Orlando to cover the game, but we would have asked about it too. Like if we had a one-on-one with a player, we would have been like, oh, what's going on with this Jimmy situation? We would have asked. And so it's just a natural progression to want to know what's the team is thinking after this news comes up. Like the Heat have not been in the news for anything other than Pat Riley telling Jimmy to shut the hell up. And then Jimmy Butler perhaps requesting a trade, which is what the reporting is leaking about. And so from Riley's perspective, he's like, all right, this is enough. Like, let's put the kibosh on this. Let's put
but he doesn't know that this doesn't work. How does he not? How is this going to work?
I think he's trying to mitigate it. I think people are going to still jabber and people are still going to occasionally ask, but I think it let's say the beat reporters know, let's not ask about it as much because there's nothing new to ask. And if ESPN's going to comment and ESPN's going to talk about it, well, that's up to ESPN. He can't control that, nor does he want to, but he wants to just assure fans. And from a business perspective, he wants to assure season ticket holders that Jimmy Butler will remain in a Heat uniform. So I think there's that kind of double meaning to it and an understanding, I should say, that he's trying to stop things from getting worse and worse and worse. I also think, though, and this is something I texted you, like it doesn't mean anything necessarily because we've seen front office personnel say, no, there's no way we're trading this. There's no way we're entertaining offers. We're not taking calls. And then sure enough, a week, 2 weeks pass and said player is traded. Like this doesn't necessarily mean or reflect what the front office actually entertains or is thinking of doing.
Right.
He might wind up trading him. And my perspective was, well, that's kind of a bad look for Riley then. Just to go out and make a statement this strictly and formally and say, we're not trading him. If you have to walk it back, and we talked about this in the earlier episode when we first heard the latest reporting regarding Jimmy, we think that there's a very likely chance of them trading him. That kind of leaves you looking a little foolish with egg on your face. And I don't know how you can clean up that act. And for a franchise that has done such an admirable job and thoughtful and purposeful job of trying to clean up their image around the league. Look, they may have botched things with LeBron in 2014. They certainly botched things with Dwayne in 2016. To some extent, they may even botch things with Chris Bosh
at the end there. Yeah.
It's a retirement. You can make an argument that they were trying to save his life, but it didn't look good. The franchise was flux as far as league-wide perception was concerned, and from their fans, and they were struggling and they were mediocre for a number of years until Dwayne came back, until Jimmy eventually signed in 2019 and then was able to carry them to great heights. But to take your franchise's best player and to perhaps treat him badly, and I think there's a lot of people who think that.
They have. I mean, for Pat Riley to say what he said in the press conference, in the end of season press conference, that bothered Jimmy Butler, and it should have bothered Jimmy Butler. That was aggressive. That was really aggressive and a little uncalled for. Even like you could argue that Jimmy Butler shouldn't have said what he said about if he's not available. We could agree with what Pat Riley said, but that's not really the point, right? And you go there, and the embarrassment of the franchise, the franchise player, the guy who brought you out of mediocrity, and you're just not even you're not even going to have a conversation with me about an extension. Like we're not even having the conversation, and you're telling me that through the media in your end of season press conference.
Right.
Like that does rub Jimmy Butler the wrong. Why wouldn't it? It would rub me the wrong way. If all of a sudden David Locke was just like, hey, by the way, Wes, we're not extending you. Like you're just and he's saying that on Locked On Jazz, and that's how I have to hear about it. I wouldn't appreciate that. And so that's the part of all of this that I get both sides where they're coming from. Like I don't but Pat Riley, I again, like you said, he can back off of this. Just because you tweet this, because you say this, doesn't mean you can't. There's no rule that says I can't trade Jimmy Butler anymore if you're Pat Riley. So my question is, why even do it? Like, what is this? This to me is just like, okay, boomer, like cool tweet. Like I'm glad you can. I'm glad you found out how to use your iPhone. Like I don't. To me, there's no reason for this statement, and that's And that's the part that's so obvious about it. And the fact that they went ahead and did it feels like it's sort of last minute damage cleanup.
Yeah.
But also just sort of you're not really reading the room in 2024. Like, this doesn't do anything. And at the at the best case scenario, nothing. Worst case scenario, to your point, you look foolish if you do trade him in February or before February.
This is if you've got the guts 10 years later. Like,
Right.
you know, that was probably looking back a foolish statement from Riley because it kind of put pressure, and LeBron was like, I got the guts. Not only that, I'm the number one player in the league. I can do whatever I want. And, you know, there were some missteps there, and we've heard some rumblings about, you know, Riley indicating that LeBron and his wife were expecting another child, that he shouldn't have mentioned it publicly. And so to your point, like, it's a great one. I don't even think that we discussed this. Like, this could have probably all been swept. Like in the challenge to Jimmy Butler at the end of last season press conference, when he said, shut the hell up, that probably could have been resolved with a phone call. Like, I know Riley's perspective was, you shouldn't have said that you could have beat that team if you had been out there, because that's disrespectful to your teammates that were out there competing and you weren't because you were hurt. So you should shut the hell up. That's something that he should have told Jimmy directly and personally, especially knowing that Jimmy was going through a traumatic issue of his own, dealing with the loss of his father. He could have called him and said, look, you shouldn't have done that. That makes Bam look bad. That makes Tyler look bad, etc.
Makes your teammates
Go
look bad.
apologize to your teammates. A phone call like that probably goes a lot better towards salvaging this relationship. Instead, it seems like it's just been slowly degrading over the last 6 months.
And for him to go out and say rumors in this statement is, again, just like, you know, people took this as like, oh, see, he got you, Shams. Like, this was not a statement versus Shams or ESPN or any of. I don't know why Shams is the only. Like, other people have reported on. Brian Windhorst has reported on this. Mark Stein has reported on this. Sam Amick has reported on this. Like, there's been a lot of reporters on this. Local beater Barry Jackson, Anthony Chang, Ira Winderman. Like, everybody's reporting on this. But this was not a statement to the media. This was a statement to Jimmy Butler. This was a statement saying, if you're going to leak what you want, in essence, a trade, then okay, we don't leak stuff. We email. We still have our AOL email address, and this is what we're doing. So and that's how they responded to it. And my point is, like, that's not how the game is played in 2024 anymore. This is not how it's played.
Does this force Jimmy's hand to make much more public trade requests then, to kind of make him look like the bad guy in all this? Is that basically what
that he did not want to do?
Right.
This is a challenge.
I said I wasn't going to trade him, you know, but Jimmy just made things untenable. Like, he just made things increasingly more difficult. And at some point we had to accommodate him because the players on this roster deserve better. And that's
maybe I am being unfair. Maybe this is a chestnut checkers, and this is Pat Riley kind of moving the pawn and up
possible.
2 spots, knowing that he has to sacrifice it, but knowing that he's going to put Jimmy in a precarious spot. And this is like, all right, we're not going to do it your way, but if you want out, you are going to look like the bad guy, not me.
I wouldn't be surprised if we hear more about, like, Jimmy behind the scenes over the last few seasons and the things that he's done that maybe have pissed off some members of the front office. And that seems like that's probably the next step. It's an ugly situation.
It's how other organizations would do it, right? Like, they would do the leak through the media stuff, but that's not what this team does, or hasn't, at least to this point.